Some stories make us reflect on love, sacrifice, and unspoken connections. A simple maid with a heart full of kindness completely transformed the life of a wealthy family. But what made this woman so strong, and can love truly heal a heart that has been deeply wounded? Join us as we follow this emotional and unexpected journey, from panic to unwavering love, from the simplest things to miraculous moments that only human connection can create. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more heartwarming and meaningful stories. Share if this story touched your heart. It was winter in the northern United States, 2006, with a cold that seemed to cut through the very flesh. Snow fell thickly, blanketing the empty street, turning the luxurious homes into cold, isolated structures. Inside the grand Caldwell mansion, the air felt heavy, saturated with the stillness of loneliness. Maya Williams entered this house with a temporary job, a cleaning position that she never expected to stay in for long. Her smooth, fair skin and her eyes, bright yet tinged with sadness, were out of place in such a cold environment. However, over the past few days, Maya had gradually grown accustomed to the silence of the place. The large glass windows of the mansion reflected dim light, creating a distant, almost surreal atmosphere, like a perfect painting lacking vitality. She had once thought of herself as nothing more than a ghost in this house, an unnoticed cleaning staff. But when she first saw Eli Caldwell's eyes, everything began to change. Eli, the son of the house's owners, was a 7-year-old boy with autism. He couldn't speak, couldn't communicate verbally, and his panic attacks often occurred with no one around to help. Maya could hear Eli's anguished cries from upstairs, sounds that no one dared face. She could still remember the first time she heard that cry, a pain and despair that could never be forgotten. Maya was a woman who had experienced life's challenges. She grew up in a poor family with her younger brother Jermaine suffering from a similar condition, unable to communicate verbally. The memories of Jermaine haunted her, especially the times he cried, and no one understood his pain. She still remembered sitting under the dining table, trying to soothe his agony with silence and comfort. So when Maya heard Eli's cries, her heart couldn't stay still. Ignoring the warnings from the housekeeper not to go upstairs, Maya made her decision. She couldn't leave a child alone and panicked in the dark. She climbed the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. Everything in the house seemed distant, as if she were entering another realm where the ghosts of the past and present intertwined. When she reached Eli's room door, she found the boy sitting on the floor, banging his head against the bookshelf in an uncontrollable panic. He didn't see her, didn't recognize Maya's presence, but Maya saw him. She recognized the terrible pain in Eli's eyes, and it was that pain that drew her near. She didn't speak, just quietly sat beside him and gently offered comfort, just as she had done for Jermaine. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Maya remained seated, not saying a word, just holding her silence, a silence that only people like her and Eli could understand. This feeling, it seemed, was the only language Eli could comprehend. Less than a few minutes later, the door suddenly opened and Preston Caldwell, Eli's father, appeared. He was a tall man with the hard-edged look of a billionaire. A white shirt, black trousers, and his eyes darkened when he saw Maya sitting next to Eli. "What are you doing here?" Preston's sharp voice echoed in the quiet room. Maya flinched, quickly standing up. I just heard him crying, and I thought he was in danger," she explained, looking down at the floor, trying to avoid Preston's gaze. Preston stared at her, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A simple maid had managed to calm his son's panic, something that top experts had never been able to do. "Get away from my son," Preston ordered, his voice firm and unyielding. But when he approached Eli and tried to lift him up, Eli suddenly screamed in panic, unwilling to let anyone touch him. The room descended into chaos. But amidst it all, something strange happened. Maya approached once more. "Let me help," Maya said softly, her voice like a soothing melody. Preston said nothing, just looked at her helplessly. Without hesitation, Maya sat down next to Eli, not touching him, just quietly observing, and raised her hand to make the comforting gesture she had learned long ago. Simple hand signs full of meaning that she had used to soothe Jermaine. She repeated those movements slowly and patiently, allowing Eli to feel safe. When Eli looked at her, he didn't speak, but a brief glimmer in his eyes made Maya feel relieved. The boy stopped screaming, no longer hitting his head. The panic gradually subsided. Maya understood that sometimes silence is the best way to listen to someone's pain. She didn't need to speak, didn't need to explain. Just being there with an open heart was enough. Maya could never forget that moment. The moment when she sat silently beside Eli as his panic slowly subsided and the silence between them became a special language only those in such a situation could understand. After Eli had calmed down, Preston stood at the door, watching them, his gaze somewhat bewildered, as if unable to believe what had just happened. "All right, I'll take Eli back to his room," Preston said in a deep voice, no longer showing any anger. He bent down, gently lifting Eli, who was now completely silent, his small hands tightly clutching Maya's shirt as if not wanting to let her go. "We'll talk later," Preston told Maya, his eyes still carrying a trace of confusion, but something had changed in them. Maya didn't respond, merely nodding slightly, watching as Preston and Eli walked toward the boy's room. Her eyes remained fixed on Eli's image, a boy with autism who couldn't communicate verbally, but was able to connect with her through silent gestures, tender moments that only love could create. Maya continued working at the Caldwell mansion, but she was no longer just a simple maid. After witnessing Eli's behavioral changes, Preston began to alter his attitude toward her. He started assigning her tasks beyond just cleaning, allowing her to spend more time with Eli. Slowly but surely, Maya and Eli formed a special bond. Maya wasn't a therapy expert, but there was one thing she could do: listen. She listened to what Eli couldn't express in words, listening to the moments of silence in the room when he couldn't find a way to express his pain. One morning, Maya entered Eli's room and found him sitting by the window, flipping through puzzle pieces without saying a word. Maya sat down near him, not disturbing the peaceful space he had created. She simply sat there without rushing, without trying to prompt Eli to do anything, just silently. She knew that for Eli, her presence was enough. Preston watched from the doorway, his eyes focused on what Maya was doing. He realized that not everyone could be patient enough to understand the things Eli couldn't express in words. Maya wasn't just caring for Eli. She was helping him understand his son in a completely new way. The mornings were no longer filled with screaming, and the afternoons no longer saw struggles when Eli couldn't connect with anyone. A week later, Preston had an unexpected meeting with Maya. He invited her into his office, a luxurious room flooded with light. Preston sat behind a large oak desk, the sunlight streaming through the window highlighting his serious demeanor. Maya stood before the desk, waiting for him to speak. "Thank you," Preston began, his voice no longer as harsh as before. "I can't imagine how Eli would be if it weren't for you." The boy. "He's really changed." Maya simply smiled, saying nothing. She knew that Preston's thanks were just the first step in the significant change he was undergoing. She understood that Preston was opening up, allowing himself to trust in things he had never thought possible before. Preston paused for a moment, his eyes gazing deeply into Maya's, as if searching for something in her, a truth he hadn't yet fully understood. "Can you help me even more?" Preston continued, his voice gentler now, though still somewhat hesitant. Maya looked at him, realizing that Preston was gradually becoming a different person, a father who no longer lived in loneliness and sorrow. He was finding ways to connect with his son, finding ways to understand him more, and most importantly, he was learning to trust those around him. "You're not an expert," Preston continued, "but I think you have something that experts don't." Maya looked at him, feeling a bit confused. "I don't know what more I can do," she said honestly. "But if Eli needs me, I'll be here." Preston said nothing more. He simply nodded, his eyes sparkling with a gratitude Maya had never seen before. She had not only helped Eli, but also helped him learn to love and accept his son once again. In the days that followed, Maya didn't just continue her cleaning duties. She became a companion in Eli's journey. She became the only person Eli trusted, the only one who could calm his panic attacks. Though she had no professional expertise, Maya gradually became an irreplaceable part of the Caldwell family, a gentle but powerful presence. Preston began to notice changes in himself. He was no longer as rigid as before, no longer a father who only gave orders. He started spending time with Eli, playing with him, drawing simple pictures together. He no longer feared or felt anxious when facing his son's panic. He learned to listen to what Eli couldn't say and to love his son in a new way. Everything seemed to have settled, but Maya couldn't have known that this peace would be easily shattered. One morning, while Maya was helping Eli with a simple task, she received a call from the housekeeper informing her that an investigation into the Caldwell family would take place. Anonymous reports had been made accusing that Eli was being abused in this very house. Maya felt her heart tighten. She knew this could ruin everything she had worked for, but she couldn't give up. She decided she would stand up for Eli, not just for him, but for herself and the Caldwell family. In the end, Preston found a way to resolve the issue. After the investigation, he realized that it wasn't just money and power that could protect his family, but love and understanding. He invited Maya to stay permanently, not just as a maid, but as a companion in caring for Eli. Maya stood before a significant choice, but she knew she could never return to her old life. She had found her purpose, and that purpose was to stay and help Eli to help the Caldwell family overcome every challenge. Day by day, Maya gradually became an inseparable part of Eli and the Caldwell family's life. Preston began to notice that Eli no longer seemed distant whenever Maya was around. In fact, whenever Maya entered the room, Eli displayed a strange reaction, a gentle glance, a soft hand-holding that he never showed to anyone else. Maya continued to teach Eli basic hand gestures, helping him communicate using sign language. She didn't rush, nor did she focus on results. Each day she found a small yet significant sign. Eli began to follow her eyes, started memorizing her gestures and expressions. Maya never viewed teaching Eli as a job, but as a journey of connecting with a child who had a world so different that no one could fully understand. In the mornings, she taught Eli to draw simple pictures without pressure, just moments of calm. She felt joy when Eli handed her puzzle pieces the first signs of trust. Gradually, Eli became more comfortable, less prone to panic attacks like before. During this time, the relationship between Maya and Preston also changed. No longer a cold and distant father, Preston began to open up. He was no longer just a wealthy man burdened with work pressures, but a father searching for a connection with his son. Someone learning to love and care for the child he had neglected for many years. Preston gradually began to approach Maya, not only to ask about Eli's progress, but also to share the deeper feelings he kept inside. One evening, when he entered the living room, Maya was sitting in the armchair, reading a book. Preston paused for a moment, hesitating before looking at Maya. "What do you think about Eli ever being able to speak?" Preston asked, his voice low and filled with concern. "He's not like other kids. I've tried many specialists, but nothing's worked." Maya looked up, her eyes meeting his sincerely. "I think Eli can speak not with words, but with signs, gestures, ways you've never thought of. The important thing is that you need to listen to him." Preston was silent, his eyes reflecting confusion. He had never thought of this. Despite being successful, he still felt incapable of connecting with his son, of understanding what Eli truly needed. Sensing the confusion in Preston, Maya continued, "Your love for him isn't the only thing Eli needs. He needs you to be there to listen to what he can't say and to accept his world. Only then can he feel safe and loved." Preston didn't say anything more, simply nodded, as if he had found an important piece of the change he needed. He stood up and moved toward the door, but turned back once more. "You've changed everything in this house. Thank you," Preston said, but this time his voice was not cold. It was sincere appreciation. Maya didn't respond, just smiled gently. But her smile wasn't just sympathy. It was a deep understanding of the person before her. She knew this was a turning point in their relationship. One night, while sitting alone in Preston's study, Maya began to open the old box she had brought with her since she first came to the house. It was a small box full of memories of her younger brother Jermaine. A faded photograph of Jermaine's smiling drawings he made as a child, and notebooks filled with words soaked in the love she had for him. She couldn't help but think of Jermaine when she saw Eli. Memories of the past rushed back, moments when she cared for him, helped him through his discomforts, though she could never get him to speak a word. She understood Eli in ways no one else could. Those memories made Maya's heart ache, but they were also the driving force that kept her staying and helping Eli. She couldn't give up, couldn't bear to see a child like Jermaine with no one around to understand him. As things seemed to stabilize, Preston began to open up more to Maya. One evening after dinner, Preston suddenly started a conversation he had long avoided. "Did you ever think you'd stay here this long?" Preston asked, his eyes locked on Maya. Maya didn't answer right away. She paused for a moment, thinking about the question. Her life before had been completely different. She never imagined she'd become so involved with this family, especially with someone like Preston, who had so many achievements and so much coldness in the past. But then the moments between her and Eli had changed everything. "No, I didn't think so," Maya replied gently. "But I can't leave. I've become attached to Eli in a way I can't explain." Preston smiled, no longer awkward like before. He understood that it wasn't just Eli, but he too had found something in his life that had been missing for so long. As time passed, the relationship between Maya and Preston grew closer. Maya was no longer just a maid. She had become a friend, a companion, and even a second mother to Eli. On early mornings, the three of them would have breakfast together, sharing simple conversations about the day ahead. Maya began to feel that she was truly a part of the Caldwell family. The sweet moments between her and Preston, the times they played with Eli, all proved that love wasn't just about blood, it was about patience and care. Preston was no longer the man who only cared about work and power. He had learned how to open his heart, how to love his son, and how to cherish the woman who had changed his family's life. Maya couldn't remember the exact day Preston asked her to stay longer, but she felt the deep change in both of them. Every morning, the soft light of dawn streamed through the window of her small bedroom. The room wasn't as luxurious as the others in the mansion, but it gave Maya a sense of safety and familiarity, a place she had begun to call home. She was no longer an outsider, no longer just a cleaning maid. She had become a part of the Caldwell family's life. Those days, Maya spent a lot of time with Eli. They played simple games like puzzles, coloring, or sensory games Eli liked. Though the boy couldn't speak, every time Eli handed her a puzzle piece or sat quietly beside her during their lessons, Maya felt something incredibly precious love didn't need to be expressed in words. Preston would sometimes stand from afar watching Maya and Eli, his eyes filled with focus and amazement. He couldn't help but feel the change in his family. Eli no longer seemed lonely, no longer submerged in panic attacks. There was a sense of peace in his eyes, in his simple gestures. Some days, Preston joined in the activities with Maya and Eli. He began to take Eli outside to the garden, letting him observe flowers and feel the wind. Though Eli couldn't speak, he would point at flowers or quietly watch birds flying across the sky, a way of nonverbal communication between him and the world around him. Maya began to realize something she never thought about when she first entered this house. This wasn't just a job. This was a family she truly wanted to be a part of, a family that had opened up and accepted her as an essential part of their life. In the following weeks, Preston began to change. He was no longer just a determined, unemotional, and distant father. Instead, he was a man learning how to face the pain of the past and how to care for his son in a more comprehensive way. He began spending time with Eli every day, not out of duty, but because he truly wanted to understand his son more. One afternoon, while they were sitting together in the living room, Preston suddenly shared an old memory with Maya. "Did you know?" he said, his eyes focused on the TV that was on, though clearly not paying attention to the program. Eli used to love going to the park with Emma on weekends. They'd walk through the flower garden, and I'd stand behind watching them laugh and play. I never joined them. Emma always urged me to, but I never did. Maya looked at Preston, understanding that he was talking about Emma, his wife, whom he lost in an accident a few years ago. He still hadn't overcome that loss, and everything related to his son Eli seemed always overshadowed by the darkness of the past. Maya simply sat quietly beside him, saying nothing. She knew that her silence was the comfort Preston needed at that moment. "I understand," Maya said softly. "Eli needs you, and you need Eli. Sometimes we can't change the past, but we can renew the present." Preston turned to her, a small smile crossing his face. "I never thought I'd feel like this. Sometimes I feel like I've lost myself, but now I feel like I'm finding a part of me again." Maya didn't answer, but she knew that Preston was not only finding his son again, but also finding himself in a family that had lost so much, but was now beginning to heal. One day when Eli was playing with puzzle pieces, Maya suddenly noticed something very special. The boy wasn't just focusing on the pieces, he was gliding his hand across the floor as if searching for something. Maya stood up, walked over to Eli, and looked in the direction he was pointing. She smiled when she saw a small butterfly flying through the window. Eli pointed at the butterfly, then turned to look at Maya. Although he didn't say a word, his gaze seemed to want to share something with her, a feeling of connection, not through words, but through a silent exchange between them. Maya bent down gently, comforting Eli. "Do you see the butterfly?" she asked. "It's a small creature, but very strong. The butterfly has flown through all the hardships and become a part of this world. You're like it, Eli." Preston stood at the door watching this scene. He felt something he hadn't realized before. Maya wasn't just teaching Eli communication skills, she was also teaching his son something more important: how to feel and live with the world around him. Not everything we need is words. Sometimes present sharing and understanding are more important than anything. Maya and Preston grew increasingly close. They weren't just colleagues in caring for Eli anymore, but had become close friends. Their conversations were no longer about Eli or work, but began to include shared aspirations, dreams, and fears. Preston no longer hid his emotions as before. He began to talk about Emma, about the pain of loss, and about unfulfilled dreams. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Preston suddenly turned to Maya, his eyes no longer cold but filled with search. "What do you think we'll do when Eli gets older? I don't think I can continue living in this loneliness. I can't keep being a father who just gives orders." Maya silently looked into Preston's eyes, feeling the sincerity in every word he spoke. She not only felt his change, but also noticed her own transformation. A connection was beginning to form between them, not through words, but through shared moments of understanding. "Maybe all we need to do is be together, Preston. Sometimes that's all we need," Maya answered, her voice gentle but firm. Preston smiled, a real smile, no longer the greeting of an employer, but the bond of a man who had found peace in his heart. The relationship between Maya Preston and Eli was gradually becoming intimate and strong. Maya was no longer just a maid, but an inseparable part of the Caldwell family. The days spent together helped them better understand love, acceptance, and patience. The moments of silence, the gentle gestures of care between them slowly created a real home. A place where love didn't need to be spoken, but could be felt by all. As everything in the Caldwell family seemed to stabilize, a sudden attack from the outside began to disrupt everything. On a gloomy morning, while Maya was helping Eli with his puzzle, she received a call from the housekeeper. His voice was shaky. "Ms. Maya, I'm sorry, but some people from Child Protective Services are here. They want to check on Eli's care." Maya felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She stood still for a moment, saying nothing. When Preston heard the news, he immediately arranged a meeting with a lawyer. Things became tense. An anonymous report had been sent accusing that Eli was being abused under the care in the house. Although the accusation was baseless, no one could ignore the public's suspicions, especially when it involved a child with special health issues like Eli. Maya's heart tightened. The months she had devoted to taking care of Eli and bonding with the Caldwell family were now being tested. She couldn't understand why anyone would want to harm this family, especially a child like Eli. She had tried her best to bring peace to the boy, but now she was facing the risk of losing everything. When the social workers arrived at the house, Maya could feel the suspicion in their eyes. They examined every nook and cranny, asking questions that made her feel as if she were being investigated. She wasn't afraid, but her heart ached. This wasn't just about protecting her job, but protecting Eli, protecting the Caldwell family that she had grown to love and now considered her own. "Can you explain Eli's situation more clearly?" one of the social workers asked, his eyes fixed on her. Maya looked at him calmly, replying, "Eli is well taken care of. We have a clear process in place, and both Preston and I always try our best to help him develop in the best way possible." Maya felt the fear and tension weighing on her shoulders, but she knew that if she didn't speak up, if she didn't protect what she and the Caldwell family had built, everything would crumble. She could feel Preston's worry from a distance. He had tried to protect her, but sometimes even he couldn't do much when the authorities were involved. Maya decided not to remain silent, but to confront the situation head on. She spoke to the social workers. "Eli needs me. He trusts me, and I won't let anyone harm this boy. Not for me, but for Eli." While Maya faced the investigation from the outside, Preston was also struggling with his own emotions. The pain of losing his wife had never left him, and now he was facing the possibility of losing Eli, the one person he had fought so hard to keep over the years. He couldn't help but feel the heavy weight of responsibility. When he saw Maya defending Eli, he realized that he couldn't do everything on his own. He had lived for so long in a world of work and loneliness, but now he had to learn to entrust part of his heart to someone else. Preston came to see Maya after a long, stressful day at work. When he entered the room, Maya was sitting gazing out the window, lost in thought. He sat down next to her, saying nothing for a while, just quietly observing her. "Thank you," Preston said, his voice deep and full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you. You've helped me realize that family isn't something you can build alone." Maya turned to look at him, her eyes gentle and understanding. "You're not alone anymore, Preston. I'll be here. Don't let fear control your life." Preston was silent for a moment. Then he reached out gently, taking her hand. "You're the only one I can trust. Don't leave us, Maya." After the tension and challenges, Preston decided to open his heart to Maya more fully. One evening, as they sat together in the dining room, Preston suddenly spoke, causing the atmosphere around them to go quiet. "Maya, you've changed our lives, not just with Eli, but with me." Preston began, his eyes sparkling with emotion that he had never shown before. "I want you to stay, not just because of Eli, but because of me." Maya looked at him, her heart pounding, not out of surprise, but because she knew something monumental was happening in her heart. "You want me to stay here to become a part of your family, to become someone important in your life." She didn't say anything for a moment, just looking at him with eyes full of sincerity. Facing Preston's pain and insecurity, Maya realized that she had become more attached to him than just as a maid. "I'm not just a part of this family. I'm someone you want by your side, not only to care for Eli, but to accompany you." Preston continued, his hands gripping tightly as if afraid that if he didn't speak now, everything would slip away. Maya looked at Preston, then smiled. "I'm here, Preston. I'm staying for you and for Eli." With a decisive step, Preston took Maya's hand and pulled her close. He looked at her one last time, his eyes soft but serious. "Will you marry me, Maya?" Maya didn't respond immediately. She just looked into his eyes, then gently nodded. "Yes, I will marry you." After Preston's proposal, everything seemed to become brighter. Although their family had gone through many trials, Maya now felt that they had overcome it all. Eli was growing stronger, and Preston was no longer just the tough father, but a man full of emotions ready to face whatever the future held. In the days that followed, Maya and Preston prepared for a simple yet meaningful wedding with the most important people in their lives, Eli and Maya's family. The wedding wasn't just a connection between two people, but a commitment to what they had built together: love, understanding, and a complete family. After the tension of the investigation, the Caldwell family gradually returned to their normal routine, but no one was the same as before. The relationship between Maya and Preston transformed profoundly. It was no longer just a relationship between employer and maid. Their conversations, the understanding glances exchanged in moments of silence, all of these pointed to an undeniable transformation. Preston began seeking out Maya more often, not for work, but for the light, meaningful conversations he realized he needed. He no longer tried to protect himself from his emotions. Instead, he sought comfort in her words, in the gentle looks she gave Eli. Every time Maya walked through the garden with Eli, Preston would watch from afar, observing the two of them, and realizing that he was learning to love again from the beginning. One afternoon, when Maya and Preston sat together in the living room, they seemed to share a different connection, not just concern for Eli, but also a deeper understanding of themselves. Maya looked at Preston, sensing the pain and worry he carried in his heart. "Preston," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I understand that you've been through so much, but don't forget you're not alone. You have Eli, and you have me." Preston said nothing, only offering a small smile. His gaze softened as he looked at Maya. He couldn't remember the last time he felt at ease like this, not when working, but when he was with someone he truly trusted. Maya was no longer just the maid. She had become an indispensable part of the Caldwell family. Early in the mornings, when Preston would wake up and go to the kitchen, he would find Maya standing next to Eli, helping him have breakfast, talking to him like a mother, caring for her child. Even though Eli couldn't speak, the connection between the three of them was clearer than ever. Maya and Preston began to find ways to care for their son together, even though neither of them knew exactly what to do. Maya couldn't help but reflect on her past when she saw Preston's gestures toward Eli. She had been a child raised in poverty, never receiving full care from her parents. But now she was witnessing Preston's change. He was no longer the cold father who focused solely on making money and giving orders. He had become a real father. He began teaching Eli the simplest things, lessons about love and patience. Preston also began to realize that love didn't always have to be tied to perfection. In the moments helping Eli in the times he played with the boy, Preston felt that he had grown so much. He no longer felt the pressure of needing to be a perfect father. Instead, he learned how to live with his child, accepting imperfections and making them a part of his love. Day by day, the bond between Maya and Preston grew stronger. One beautiful evening, as they sat together under the candlelight in the dining room, Preston suddenly stood up and looked into Maya's eyes. A quiet atmosphere enveloped the room. He smiled gently, took her hand, and said, "Maya, you've changed everything in this family. You've given me a chance to be the father I never dared hope to be. And more than that, you've made me realize that I don't have to live in the past anymore. You've helped me find my life again." Maya looked at him, moved by his words. She couldn't imagine that she would become so attached to a family like this, a family she once was an outsider to. But now everything was different. She felt the love, the patience, and everything they had built together. Preston paused for a moment, then took out a small box, slowly opening it. Inside was a simple wedding ring, but full of meaning. He looked at Maya, his eyes no longer stern, but full of tenderness. "Maya," he said, his voice deep and sincere, "I want you to stay, not just because of Eli, but because of me. I want us to build a future together, a family. Will you marry me?" Maya felt her heart race, emotions flooding in. She didn't know what to say at first, but one thing she was sure of was that she couldn't live without this family. Even without an extravagant proposal or a lavish wedding, their love was enough to write a beautiful story. "Yes," Maya whispered, "I will be your wife." Maya and Preston's wedding wasn't a grand event with hundreds of guests, but a small gathering with their closest family and friends. The wedding took place in the cozy space of the Caldwell mansion. Maya wore a simple wedding dress, not an expensive design, but perfect in Preston's eyes. They exchanged simple vows, but full of meaning. Eli, even though he couldn't speak, was also part of this special day, sitting next to his mother and father, their hands tightly clasped. This wasn't just Maya and Preston's wedding. It was a wedding for the whole family, a family they had built through struggles, shared moments, and understanding. Maya, Preston, and Eli began a new life, free from the shadows of the past, with a brighter future ahead. Maya had not only become Preston's wife, but also Eli's mother, the woman who brought warmth and love to the entire family. The peaceful days passed by, and their lives were no longer filled with long nights of worry or loneliness. They overcame every challenge together, not just for each other, but for love and family. One spring morning, when the family took a walk in the park, Preston looked at Maya, his eyes shining in the sunlight. "Thank you for staying with us. You've made us whole," he said, his voice filled with happiness. Maya smiled, holding Preston in Eli's hands, feeling happiness in every moment. "We're a family, Preston, and this family will always be filled with love." Maya, Preston, and Eli's lives continued to grow with love and connection in the days that followed. Although challenges still arose, they had learned to face everything with patience and trust in one another. The relationship between Preston and Maya deepened over time. They were no longer just husband and wife. They were companions, people who understood and shared everything in their lives. Maya no longer felt like an outsider. When she looked into Preston's eyes, she saw not just love, but deep respect and gratitude. Their conversations were no longer just about work or household concerns, but about dreams, future plans, and the simple things they had never thought about when they were alone. One evening, after the family had finished dinner, they sat together on the sofa in the living room. Eli, now a bit older, sat next to Maya, occasionally turning to smile at the gentle care his mother gave him. Preston sat across from them, his eyes never leaving his wife and son, filled with warmth, tenderness, and love. We've been through so much, but now I really feel happy, Preston said, his voice low and emotional, his eyes sparkling. Thank you for being here, for teaching me how to love, not just my son, but also myself and those around me. Maya looked at Preston, her smile gentle but full of deep affection. I feel the same, she whispered. I've found my family, and that makes me feel fulfilled. The three of them began to build long-term plans for the future. Although inevitable challenges lay ahead, they were no longer afraid. Maya decided to return to school and continue studying psychological therapy methods for children with autism. She wanted to help other children like Eli, giving them the chance to be understood and cared for, just as Eli had been. Preston, despite his busy work schedule, began to find ways to reduce his workload and spend more time with his family. He was no longer focused solely on numbers and transactions, but began to appreciate the intangible values of life, the moments of love, connection, and care for his loved ones. Eli, with Maya's help and patience, made significant strides. The boy not only learned to communicate using sign language, but also began developing self-awareness and confidence. In the past, Eli would shy away from people, but now he was stepping out into the world with unwavering support from his family. Though Maya and Preston had married, simply the atmosphere in their home was always filled with love. One day, during a family trip, Preston suddenly took Maya's hand and looked at her with sincere eyes. You know, Preston said, there are times when I didn't believe I could find a love like this. A love that not only makes me feel loved, but also teaches me how to love myself and others. Maya looked at Preston, her heart racing. I feel the same. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to become part of this family. They stood together, gazing at the vast blue sea before them. This trip was not just a vacation. It was a moment to celebrate what they had overcome and look toward a promising future. Time passed, and the Caldwell family became a model of resilience and unconditional love. Maya had not only changed Eli, but also transformed Preston, a man who once lived in the shadow of work and painful past memories. Now he was a true father, a loving husband, and a strong partner. Their family began to travel together, engage in community activities, and build plans for the future. For Maya, every moment spent with Eli and Preston was a precious gift she never could have imagined before. Their second wedding, after a few years of living together, took place on a beautiful morning with their closest loved ones attending. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a celebration of love that had helped them overcome all difficulties and build a real family. Today, the Caldwell family is not just a simple, peaceful home, but also a testament to the resilience of love and acceptance. Maya, Preston, and Eli have built a complete life, not just for each other, but also because of everything they had overcome to find this happiness. Maya looks at Eli and Preston every day, feeling her heart overflow with gratitude. She had found not just a family, but a true life partner, someone who would walk with her for the rest of her life. Their happy, peaceful days were no longer a dream, but a reality that could be touched, built from love, understanding, and patience.